I'm here with veteran Charles Bush. We're at his residence at Cape May in Wilmington. My name is Nick Wiget. I'm from Wilmington College's Department of Communication, where we're doing our Veterans Oral History Project. Mr. Bush, how are you?
I'm doing okay.
Okay, let's go back to the very start here. Tell me a little bit about your childhood. Where were you born? And tell me a little bit about your upbringing, if you would.
I was born in Washington Courthouse, and I don't remember anything up there. And when I was very young, we moved to Clarksville, and my dad had a general store there. So all the time I was in Clarksville, why, he had the store.
So what kind of store was that?
It was a general store, and they sold just about everything. Groceries and hardware and dry goods.
Okay.
And of course, there were a lot of small stores at that time. You know, there weren't any big stores like there are now. You know, like Walmart and places like that.
Did you have siblings growing up?
No. Only
child?
Yeah.
Did you work in the store growing up?
No, I didn't. I guess I was too young part of the time, and the other time I was, they didn't need me. So I would help out a little bit.
Well, now you were in school during that time too, I assume.
Yeah.
Where'd you go to school? Tell me about that.
There was a school right at the edge of town, and it had all 12 grades in one building. The first 6 were on the bottom floor, and the upper floor had the remaining 6 grades. And my wife and I both went through all 12 grades there in the same building.
What year did you graduate?
43.
Okay. So you graduate from high school.
Yeah.
This predates Clinton Massey, I would assume.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
About 20 years before that.
Exactly. What were your plans after high school? Did you intend to join the military initially, or did you have a...
Well, yeah, I did plan to join the military because that's what everybody did at that time.
Okay.
And when I graduated, the war had been going on for several years, and I knew that I was going to be going in the military.
What branch did you join and why?
I wanted to join the aviation cadet and be a pilot, and I couldn't get my parents to sign for me, so I took a test called ASTP, which was a test for the Army so that they would send you directly to a college. And so I had the paperwork when I went in.
Where did you initially go for training? What were the first experiences you had there?
Well, I went to Fort Thomas. That was the induction place. And we were there for a few days. And while I was there, they asked for volunteers if they wanted to go into aviation cadet. Well, that's what I wanted to do. So I volunteered for that and went to Jefferson Barracks, Missouri, for basic training, and they gave us all the tests to see if we'd qualify for cadet training.
So we're at the tail end of World War II here.
This was getting, well, yeah, fairly well through it, yeah.
Did you see any combat during World War II?
Well, I was in a troop carrier group, and our planes were C-47s, and I was a radar operator, and so I was on flying status, and we would go behind the lines occasionally, and we'd go behind the lines by going out over the ocean and then coming back behind the lines. And then we'd drop supplies out to the partisans. This was over in Italy. in the 12th Air Force.
How long were you over there?
I was over there overseas probably less than 6 months because the war ended when I was there.
Was there a sense of relief for you knowing that?
Oh yeah, I was.
To help, but
Yeah, I was. I had traveled up to see a friend. This was our scoutmaster. His name was Carol Bolander, and he was in charge of P-61 Night Fighter group. And so I hitchhiked up there and visited with him. And then on the way back, I was coming through Livorno, and the bells started ringing. Everybody started shouting, and the war was over at that time.
Okay, so what happened after that? You're still serving. Did you come back to the States? Did you stay over?
Yeah. After the war was over, or after the war stopped, we were put on detached service, and 3 of our planes were sent to another air base in northern Italy near Verona. And from there, we went up into Austria and brought back British POWs. And we made 2 trips up there. And of course, the British POWs were really glad to get out of there.
Of course.
And then soon after that, we got orders to ship out. And we were sent back down to Naples, where we had arrived a few months earlier. And we got on the same ship. It was called the Warren P. Richardson, General Warren P. Richardson, Coast Guard ship. And anyway, we started back, but we didn't go back to the States. They dropped us off at Trinidad in the Caribbean. And they were going to use some of our planes down there, but they didn't have any use for my MOS, my qualification as a radar operator. They didn't have a use for that at that time. So I got sent back.
Tell me a little bit more about that, the special training you had as a radar operator. How did that come about, or did you choose that, or how did that...
Well, I went to radio school. I went to Scottsfield, Illinois, and it was most of the summer of 1944 that we were in radio school, and we learned Morse code and something about radios so we could be flight radio operators. And most of the people that graduated from there went to gunnery school, Yuma, Arizona, but a few of us were sent down to Boca Raton for radar training. And our planes that were used there were B-17s, so at that time they must have had plenty of planes, because that was one of the bombers that was used a lot in the war. And we would usually fly in the mornings, fly out over the ocean and practice homing in on ships and islands. So this was used extensively in the South Pacific because they could home in on any ships, and if it's a Japanese ship, why, they could home in on it and find it in a big area.
That's nice that they could replicate.
Yeah, so that worked out pretty good.
What was the hardest part of your training? Do you remember at any point where you thought, I don't know if I...
No, I never thought it was too difficult.
What did you enjoy most about it?
Oh, I kind of liked it. And of course, we had basic training at Jefferson Barracks, and that wasn't hard. Just did a lot of marching.
Were you an athlete growing up or anything like that?
Oh, I just played basketball.
Okay.
That's the only sport we had.
Okay. Now
I like to swim.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good too, especially some of the locations where you ended up there. Let's talk about your promotions through the military, your ranks. Tell me a little bit now. You join, obviously, low rank, make your way up. What was the highest rank you ever achieved?
Sergeant.
Okay.
And when we got out of radar school, they made us corporals.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then later on, after I got back, we were flying out of Miami, and this was Military Air Transport Command.
Okay.
And our job there was to deliver supplies all over the Caribbean and South America, and even over to Africa. And I had one trip over to Casablanca through South America. And I guess the highlight of that for me was stopping at Ascension Island in the middle of the South Atlantic. It's just like a big rock out there, but they had an airport. And what we would do generally is fly one day and then lay over for 2 days. But the plane would go on, taken by another crew. So the plane would be going, all the time. I mean, they would just
a little break in there.
Well, yeah. It was good.
Did you enjoy traveling all these different places and seeing the world?
Well, that part of it anyway.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about military life in general. What was the transition for you? What was that like from civilian to military life? Was there anything that was surprising or difficult?
Well, yeah, I'd never been away from home very much, and we were out at Jefferson Barracks. Why, it was okay, but it was kind of lonesome being away from home for a long period of time, and what we had was the way we lived was. It was okay. I mean, we could get by. There was no luxury living or anything like that.
Now you say you and your wife went to school together. Did you correspond during this time?
No.
Really?
Well, we weren't together at that time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. How did that come about? We can jump around a little bit. So you got married to a girl that you grew up with.
Well, I really didn't hardly know her when we were in school because I was 3 years ahead of her.
Okay.
And anyway, I was going to college then, and anyway, I forget how it was, but I thought, well, I think I'd like to get a date with her. And so I was going to Ohio State, and I was taking flight training. So this is about the time I got through with my flight training. So I got a rental airplane and flew over the farmhouse where she lived and dropped a note out asking her for a date. So that's
awesome.
That's how we got started.
That's a very unique way to do that.
I don't know how excited she was, but her little brother, he really liked it.
Well, if you convinced the family.
Yeah.
So, all told, I mean, how long did you serve? How long were you?
I was in 30 months.
Okay, 30 months. Then
Yeah.
you said you left there and you ended up going to Ohio State. What was your major at Ohio State?
Business,
Business, okay.
business administration.
Did you find yourself using some of the skills that you obtained in the military later on?
Somewhat, yeah, because I went into the sales and service TV, which was very young at that time. And some of the training I had repairing radios helped out. So,
how long did you work in that field?
I had a shop that I had for 36 years. And that was the main thing that we had was television, sales and service. And of course we'd do antenna work or anything like that. And I had 2 stores at one time. And it was something I really liked.
Yeah, all this is fascinating to me, is having grown up in the generation of analog terrestrial television, the digital TV, HD TV world.
There was a real evolution
Yeah.
in how that developed, because it started out pretty primitive, and then it kept evolving. You know, like they had tubes to start with, and then transistors, and then it went on from there.
Tubes, transistors, then on to
Yeah.
the microchip.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. We'll go back. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about military stuff. You made some friends while you were in the military.
Yeah, I had several good friends that I kept in touch with for years afterwards.
Yeah.
And they're all gone now, except maybe one. And but we corresponded and would get together occasionally. And two of them lived out in Iowa, and I drove out and visited both of them while I was still in college yet. And another one was in the fire department in Chicago. And anyway, he was a chief on the west side of Chicago, and he was stationed at O'Hare. So we'd just sent Christmas cards out. So finally I got to see him again, then we got together every so often.
That's cool, I like that.
And he had an uncle that lived down at Marco Island, and so we would see him every winter, because he would go down and stay with his uncle in the wintertime, and we lived just about 8 miles from there, down near Naples.
Okay. Any funny stories? I know we said before we started this interview, you said, I hope I remember things. What are some interesting moments you had during your military service, or things that you over the years maybe have recalled and told people? Does anything come to mind?
Well, I know one thing. When we were in Naples, we were all unassigned, and we had to go to a replacement depot at a place called Caserta. And this was in the springtime, and it was really chilly there. I had a flight suit, you know, it was especially for high altitude, and I would wear that when I slept, and it still wasn't warm enough. And anyway, we got the bright idea, maybe we could just build a little fire. We had some paper. We thought we'd build a little fire, maybe we'll heat up the tent. Well, we started to do that, and it blazed up, and we thought the tent was going to burn down. Scared us to death. And of course, as soon as it went out, we were just as cold as ever.
Right. Sounds like a good idea in theory. You know,
Yeah.
practice. We saw a little bit of service, like I said, in combat zones, although mostly flying over and stuff. But
Yeah.
were there any points where you felt genuinely, not afraid, but like,
No, not really. I guess when you're that young, you don't know the difference anyway.
right? Yeah, feel like you're invincible, right? Did you ever return back to some of those locations overseas after your military service?
Yeah. In 1961, a friend of mine and I went over to pick up a Volkswagen minibus at Frankfurt. And we drove around parts of Europe and went down through Austria and Liechtenstein, Switzerland, and then we went I wanted to go down to Italy, where I'd been stationed before. And we went through one of the tunnels, and anyway, they told us to put our car on one of those flat cars. And we didn't know where we were supposed to be, so we got in it. We rode through the tunnel on a flat car. And I don't know if that was safe or not, but we got through it all right. And then we drove on down into Italy, where I'd been stationed before. And then we drove back up along the Riviera, the Italian and French Riviera, back up to Paris. And then we dropped the vehicle off there and flew back from there. And then we went out after, about a month later, went out to Port Newark to pick it up where it had been shipped. So that was a lot of fun.
I like Volkswagen buses were. They don't make them like that anymore. I like those. Do you recall the day your service ended?
It was March the 14th. It was my oldest grandson's birthday, but of course it was in the opposite sequence. 1946.
Do you remember anything about that day? You had plans to go on to college, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got out at Fort McPherson in Atlanta, Georgia, and anyway, I'd been stationed out near St. Louis, and I wanted to go back out there and visit some friends. And I stopped in Lookout Mountain, Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I went through the little park there, Rock City, I guess that's it, Rock City, and then went on out to St. Louis, and then back home. And I got out of the military just about 2 weeks before I was 21.
What are you most proud of when it comes to your military service?
Well, I was glad that I served. And I have a good feeling about the military, but I didn't want to make a career of it. And it was a very interesting experience, but I wouldn't want to do it again. I mean, there were some good things, and there was times when you'd be bored, and there'd be times you wanted to be someplace else, and your life wasn't your own then. You couldn't make hardly any decisions.
Now, are you part of any veterans organizations, or do you attend veterans events now?
They have events here, yeah.
Other than
And I belong to the American Legion,
okay.
but I don't participate in much.
Yeah. How do you think, this kind of sort of already answered, how do you think your military experience affected your life, other than?
I think it was probably a good experience. I think it really prepared you for the rest of your life. And, but that was just my own experience, you know. I think everybody had a different experience. Some, I don't know that anybody really liked it, but I'm sure some did because it stayed in.
Well, what would be your message to young people when it comes to this? Would you say that it's a worthwhile endeavor, if that's something you'd like to do? But
Yeah, I think it's something that everybody should experience. That, or maybe something like the Peace Corps, you know, so they could serve their country.
Mr. Bush, is there anything else you would like to add? Anything we're forgetting to remember?
I don't remember.
Well, Mr. Charles Bush, thank you so much for joining us here on the Veterans Oral History Project.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay.